EA is promising to give Battlefield fans everything they've ever wanted in the next game: a return to the classic class system, 64-player matches, real, meaningful destruction, all the good stuff. So why does nobody believe them? Why does every positive leak feel less like a reason for hype and more like a hostage negotiation? Today, we're not just covering the latest rumors, we're investigating a crime scene: the near total destruction of player trust in one of the biggest franchises in gaming history. And the central question is this: is this a genuine redemption story in the making? Or are we all just getting ready to watch a ghost? To understand what's coming, we have to start with the body on the floor. We have to perform an autopsy on Battlefield 2042. Because this wasn't just a bad game, it was a fundamental betrayal of what the series was supposed to be. The murder weapon is obvious: the specialist. This wasn't just a simple change, it was the thing that broke the game's entire soul. For 20 years, Battlefield was built on a foundation of rock, paper, scissors team play. You saw a tank, you knew an engineer was the answer. You needed ammo or a revive, you looked for a support or a medic. There were front lines, team cohesion, and a shared identity. The specialist blew all of that to hell. Suddenly you had a lobby full of 10 different guys in ghillie suits, half of them using grappling hooks to cosplay Spider-Man, and the other half dropping sentry turrets like it's Team Fortress. It was chaos, but not the good kind. It was an incoherent mess that actively fought against teamwork. And don't just take my word for it. The head of the franchise himself, Vince Zampella, eventually had to come out and admit they strayed a little too far from what Battlefield is. You don't say. That's the closest you'll ever get to a corporate admission of guilt. But the weapon is only part of the story. You have to look at the flawed plan. The marketing for 2042 was all about next-gen scale: 128 players, the biggest maps ever. It sounded incredible on a PowerPoint slide. In reality, it was a disaster. These massive, empty maps were terrible. They were so devoid of cover and so sprawling that half the match was spent just running across an open field, hoping a sniper on a hill a kilometer away didn't get bored. It became a walking simulator punctuated by random, meaningless death. The scale didn't add strategy. It removed it. It was all spectacle, no substance. And then there was the getaway. The game didn't just launch with bad ideas, it launched in a state that was, frankly, insulting. A catastrophic swarm of bugs, glitches, terrible performance, and netcode that felt like it was from 2005. This wasn't an accident. This was a symptom of a game shoved out the door to hit a holiday release window. A complete and total disrespect for the $60 or $70 people paid for it. They didn't just sell a bad game, they sold a broken one. So we have the body, we have the weapon, and we have the botched execution. But that only explains how it happened. The real question, the one that gets to the heart of this investigation, is why? Why did DICE, the studio that built this legendary franchise, make these choices? This wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate strategy. And to understand the motive, you have to look back a little further to the start of the identity crisis with Battlefield 5. After that game's marketing blew up in their faces, it's like the studio lost its nerve. They stopped trusting their own formula and started looking over their shoulder at what everyone else was doing. They started chasing trends. And that brings us to the smoking gun. The specialist system wasn't some bold new creative idea to improve Battlefield. It was a transparent, cynical attempt to chase the hero shooter and battle royale trend. It was a business decision, not a gameplay one. They saw the money Apex Legends and Warzone were making selling character skins and thought, we need a piece of that. The entire core of their game was sacrificed at the altar of monetization. They fundamentally changed the gameplay loop just so they could sell you a different outfit for Sundance. And the community knew it from day one. You can go back and look at the Reddit threads and the YouTube comments from the reveal. People called it immediately. This wasn't Battlefield. This was a desperate attempt to be something else, and in the process, it became nothing at all. That was the motive. Not creativity, greed. It's so baffling because it's not like they didn't have the answers. They had the blueprint for a perfect Battlefield game sitting right there in their own back catalog. They had Exhibit A, the stolen blueprint of Battlefield 3 and 4. Let's be clear, this isn't just about nostalgia. This is about a proven, successful, and beloved game design that they inexplicably decided to throw in the trash. Think about what made those games work. The four-class system gave everyone a clear role. You knew your job and you knew how your squad fit into the larger battle. It created spontaneous teamwork. The 64-player count was the absolute sweet spot. It was large-scale enough to feel like a war, but focused enough that your actions actually mattered. It was the perfect balance between grand chaos and strategic impact. And the destruction, the levolution, it wasn't just a gimmick, blowing a hole in a wall to create a new sightline, or taking down a skyscraper to change the entire flow of the map. That was a core strategic pillar of the experience. It all came together to create those only in Battlefield moments. The stuff that wasn't scripted. The stuff that happened organically because the game's systems were so well designed. Rendezuking a jet, C4 in a Jeep, all of it. That was the magic formula. A formula they perfected, owned, and then chose to abandon. Which brings us to today. After years of the community screaming after the player count for 2042 fell off a cliff, it seems like they've finally listened. All the recent leaks, primarily from credible sources like Tom Henderson, paint a very specific picture. It's a picture of a confession. The next game is rumored to have a modern setting. It's rumored to bring back the classic four-class system. It's rumored to focus on 64-player maps. It's rumored to have a renewed emphasis on a massive, overhauled destruction system. Notice a pattern here? Every single one of these new features is a direct one-to-one reversal of a specific failure from Battlefield 2042. Bringing back classes is a confession that specialists were a mistake. Focusing on 64 players is a confession that 128 didn't work. Prioritizing destruction is a confession that they let a core pillar of the franchise wither and die. This isn't innovation. This is a desperate course correction. And the community reaction tells the whole story. The top-rated comment on the Reddit thread breaking these leaks says it all. This is literally all they had to do with 2042. It's a mix of relief and pure rage. Relief that they're finally doing the obvious thing. And rage that it took them this long in a completely dead game to figure it out. The promises are correct. Everyone agrees on that. But the trust required to believe in those promises has been burned to the ground. So this leads us to the final verdict. Can a ghost be redeemed? After all this, after the lies and the broken launches and the trend chasing, can we actually believe them this time? The only reason anyone has a shred of hope is because of history. We have to look at the precedent, the redemption arc of Battlefield 4. That game's launch was an absolute catastrophe, a technical train wreck that was almost as bad as 2042. The community was furious, but DICE did something incredible. They stopped everything. They dedicated an entire studio to fixing the game for over a year. They launched the community test environment, and they worked directly with players to turn a broken mess into one of the most beloved games in the entire series. They proved that it can be done. They proved they are capable of snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. That history is the only thing keeping the faintest pulse of optimism alive in the community. But here's the twist. This is not the same situation. The stakes are infinitely higher now. Back then, after the disaster of Battlefield 4, they still had a massive well of goodwill built up from the masterpiece that was Battlefield 3. The community was willing to be patient. They were willing to give them a second chance. Now? After the marketing disaster of Battlefield 5 and the complete systems failure of Battlefield 2042 back-to-back, that well of goodwill is bone dry. There is nothing left. The fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me principle is in full effect. The community is not going to wait a year or two for them to fix a broken game this time. They will not tolerate another launch where the game is unplayable for 3 months. The margin for error has completely vanished. So the verdict is clear. On paper, they have the right plan. They've seemingly rediscovered their own stolen blueprint for success. They've issued their confession by reversing every single one of 2042's terrible ideas. And they have a history that proves they are capable of a redemption arc. But this is their absolute last chance. This is it. One life left. Another botched launch, Another technical disaster, another whiff of cynical trend-chasing monetization, and it's over. The franchise will be finished, and it will deserve it. This isn't a redemption story yet. It's a parole hearing, and the entire gaming community is the jury, watching, waiting, and daring them to screw it up one last time. If you made it this far, you're probably as invested in this as I am. So hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed to Relay HQ so you don't miss our updates when the first real gameplay finally drops. The evidence will speak for itself. Now I want to know what you think. What is the one single thing they absolutely have to get right at launch for you to even consider trusting them again? Let me know down in the comments.